Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We know that you have lots of stuff going on and life is busy, so we really appreciate you taking time out of your day, whether it's your lunch or your mid-afternoon or still early morning. We appreciate you spending some time with us to have this very important conversation. My name is Becky Megas, she, her pronouns, and I am the founder and chief care connector for Women in Sustainability. For those that are new to us, Women in Sustainability is an inclusive social and environmental justice nonprofit dedicated to caring for the people that care for the planet through community advocacy, resources, and education to create a sustainable and equitable future through the feminist viewpoint and leadership. Women in Sustainability strives to create a safe space for like-minded and diverse individuals to create purposeful connections and conversations such as the one we're having today. All are welcome in this community. Before we get started, I'm actually going to go ahead and launch a poll. We got a quick question for everybody. So we're going to get that poll launched for you. Give me 1 second. Let me check and make sure we're good here. All right. So we want to know. All right. We would like to know, how familiar are you with the circular economy and plastic topic? One, I'm an expert, I'm somewhat familiar, I always wanted to learn more, or what, plastics are a problem? So go ahead and answer in the poll, and I will go ahead and introduce today's speaker. Today we have Leticia Socal joining us. She is a chemist with a PhD in materials science. She's a seasoned plastic industry professional with 15 years of experience in R&D, intellectual property, market strategy, and 3D printing materials. She is passionate about sustainability and makes every effort to educate consumers and organizations about plastic waste and recycling. She is a recognized thought leader in her area, working in environmental impact assessments of new recycling technologies and serving as a board member and mentor for several startups and accelerators globally. Leticia also runs a sustainability blog, netu.org, focused on sustainability education and organizes environmental education activities at her local school. Most recently, she joined ClimeCo as Senior Manager, Plastics and Recycling, where she works closely with plastic waste collection and recycling projects in Asia and Africa. She is committed to leverage her skills to drive real change in consumption patterns, helping to create a zero or lower waste economy. So please help me give a very warm Women in Sustainability welcome to today's speaker, Leticia Socal. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll so I can share these results with you before we get started.
Amazing. Thank you, Becky, for the kind introduction. And let me see, we have 2 experts in the room. Okay, so I can ask questions if I don't know anything. Everyone is aware about the plastic problem, so that's good. And somewhat familiar, always wanted to learn more. Okay, so I think we got a good level there, right? So let me share my screen. Let's get us started. Here. Can you see? Can you hear me well?
Yep, that looks great.
Okay, let me just take this out. Okay, well, I'm so glad to be here. I'm a big fan of this community. I think my first webinar was probably 2 years ago when I had the chance to meet Elizabeth, that is attending the webinar today. And I'm so excited to see so many people interested in this topic. And, hopefully we're going to find some solutions and learn something together today, right? So let me start with our agenda. We're going to start with some data in plastics production and the impact of plastics in climate change. And then we're going to discuss about plastics in the environment as a leader in the oceans and in the land. And then we're going to shift to solutions. We're going to discuss about our consumption patterns and the circular economy concept and what are the principles behind the circular economy and what are their impact and how they can be a solution and for us and for the planet. We're going to wrap up with some regulatory drivers. And then also I added at the end some examples of things that we can do as an individual and as a business. So, okay. Plastic production and applications. So we are surrounded by plastic, right? If you all look around you in your household or in your office, you're going to see plastic bottles, you're going to see plastic flooring, you're going to see, a food wrap somewhere. So I thought we could start looking at some data in the plastic production. Right, so you see the chart on the left, and you see how we evolved from 2 million tons of plastics produced in 1950 to over 400 million tons in 2020. That's a very steep growth, indeed. So where all that plastic is going? So that's the chart on the right, where we see packaging as number one application with almost 40% of the market. So that's plastic, making sure that food is not wasted, right? That it has a longer shelf life, that can be transported to regions where that are underserved, right? We see 20% of plastic in building construction. So when you think about housing envelope, making houses insulated with more energy efficient, more comfortable overall, we see almost 10% of plastics going to automotive, and that's a lot of plastic replacing stainless steel and other materials, right? Making cars lighter and then emitting less CO2, right? More efficient cars, electronics, electrical. We all have our cell phones, right? Or devices. They are light, they are portable, they are convenient, right? Household items or even protective gears for sports like helmet. Or Kevlar pants for a biker, right? So all those things, those are all markets that plastic is present today. The last bucket there, I just want to highlight medical, right? Because, with COVID and the pandemic, how many tests we had done, right? Lots of plastics there. The shots, the syringe, and even the whole like the transportation of the vaccines and the conservation of those. So those are all things that the plastic market is serving today. So those are all great applications, right? But probably a market that grew too fast and poorly regulated. So as we advance in our presentation, I really want you to keep that in the background, right? Because it sounds like we created a monster, but we will be naive in thinking that plastics are going away. We are going to do the best we can, with the circular economy principles that we're going to see today. But when you think about all the applications that I just mentioned here, we can reduce a lot, but it's not going away, right? So let's keep that in mind as we move forward here. So this slide talks about plastic pollution in the context of climate change, and that's often forgotten because the plastic waste problem is so huge and so evident, right? You see in front of your eyes, you see when you go to the beach, you see the turtle picture with the straw, right? But in the context of climate change, when you look at the pie chart on the right, and you see the green part there, those are the emissions related to production of goods and management of lands. The bottom green part, the 10.2 billion tons of CO2 equivalent here, so that's related to material production. That's what plastic is, right? Not just plastic, but also steel, aluminum, and cement. So that's really the part of the pie where all the materials and the emissions related to materials manufacturing is accounted. The Center for International Environmental Law estimates that the greenhouse gas emissions from plastic production plus incineration, and we're already going to the end of life, could be 10% of the entire remaining budget by 2050 if nothing is done. If business stay as usual and that production chart that we saw in the previous slide continues to grow, and it is estimated to grow 3% a year, by the way. So the plastic account in emissions could be 10%, which is equivalent, just to give you an idea, of 615 large coal-fired power stations. So that's not small, but the good news is that 40% of the emissions associated to making materials could be reduced by applying or using the principles of circular economy, right? So that's the part that we should focus. As far as litter, as I said, that's the most evident one, right? We see that every day. 95% of the plastic packaging value is lost in one single use. That's $80 billion to a year lost. About 11 million metric tons of plastic enter our ocean every year, which is roughly one garbage truck a minute. And if business stays as usual, I'm sorry, this is going to triple by 2040. And then we're going to have more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050. So, of course, we want to prevent that trend, and the way to do that, similarly to the emissions, which was the previous slide, is to apply the principles of circular economy. So, how did we get here, right? So, before we get in the principles of circular economy, let me tell you how is our economy now, which you know is linear, right? It's not circular. So 98% of the feedstock used to make plastics today is virgin from fossil fuels, and 78 million tons average of plastic production in a year. From that, 40% is landfilled, 32% leaks in the environment, in our lands or in the ocean. 14% is incinerated, so that accounts for the coal plants that I mentioned before, plus production. And 14% is collected for recycling. However, we lose 4% of that in the process. 8% is actually downcycled, which is the top here. So if you don't know what downcycle is when, for example, a plastic bag is transformed in a lumber or a bench or decking. So that's when something is transformed in a lower value article or item. So 8%, or maybe a water bottle that became fiber, like a PET recycled fiber in a garment. So that's considered downcycle as well. So 8% goes through downcycling, and only 2% make up the loop here, right? So we need more, right? We need much more. We need to move to a different model, which is more like this. And that's when I start talking, and then we're gonna, deep dive as much as we can in 15 minutes in the circular economy principles. So that should look more like this, where renewable source virgin feedstock is coming in. So it's more like it still have an amount of virgin feedstock, but it's renewable, right? And that's not just the manufacturing, right? It's design and production. So we design products in a way that they can make up that loop, and that could be the loop of reuse after first use, can be reused over and over and over again. And we're gonna talk more about reuse in a minute, right? Which is it's a great tool for the circular economy. Or it can make up this whole cycle of recycling. It could be mechanical recycling or chemical recycling, but it's a material that's designed to make that, right? It's not just taking the resources from the environment, making whatever you want, and wasting in the environment, right? It's more like, let's think about what you're going to do. Let's design for circularity, right? You probably heard about that. So that's what this chart is about. So this one, if you heard me before, I have in a single presentation because I love this chart. Don't be scared. It's colorful, but I will guide you through that. It's super cool. So when you look at the business as usual, deep blue here, volume of plastic being produced, right? So this chart breaks down that volume by action. So it's telling you that by implementing those principles, which are reduce, reuse, replace, substitute, mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, right? What do they mean for that big volume there? So it's saying that if we reduce, if we eliminate unnecessary plastic, right? If we reuse, if we start to, reusing, and could be at an individual level, could be a reusable bag, could be a reusable bottle, could be a lot of things, could be start using real silverware instead of plastic silverware. Like, there's a lot of things in there, right? Only by doing that and by creating new delivery models for reuse, like taking back, reverse logistics, systems for washing, sanitizing, we can reduce 30% of that volume. 30% is huge, right? Look at the dimension that we have here in million metric tons. So 30% of that volume is really, really significant. Replacing or substitution of plastic by paper, by even coated paper, which, I'm not a fan, but it's better than plastic, right? And compostables, we can reduce 17% of that volume, right? By recycling, which is the area that I work more closely, we can reduce 20% of that volume. So that's really important, right? And we're going to talk more about recycling later, and I'm going to break this down in mechanical and chemical recycling. So just by taking those actions, we can really, really reduce the plastic entering our ocean by 80% by 2040, right? Only using those existing tools and also policy mechanisms. So that's why I think this chart is so powerful, because we often talk about reduce, reuse, recycle, and we do our best to do all of them, but I think there is a lack on the quantification of what they mean to the whole system, right? And this chart does a good job. Moving to each one, and then now we're going to talk about reuse, and then we're going to talk about recycling. So some reuse facts, and I'm a big fan of reuse. I'm sure you all familiar with this space, so you've been hearing a lot of innovations in the reuse space. It's been amazing and very inspiring, right? All the things, and it's just a no-brainer, because when a business starts to reuse and implement reuse packaging or systems, they start to save money. So it's a win-win for the planet, it's a win-win for the business, and for the consumer too, right? So I just to highlight reuse here, I'm sharing two charts that tell a lot, right? The first one is telling the ceramic mug, right, compared to paper cups. So when you wash that mug 500 times, you spend this much of water. When you use 500 cups, you consume that amount of water. So you only bought one. So you didn't, you cut costs because you didn't buy the 500 cups, right? You only have that mug. So you reduce costs, you reduce emissions, right? Because the paper cups, they don't need to travel to you, right? You already have your mug there, so you reduce emissions. And of course, you don't have waste. Of course, you need to have a system that sanitizes and clean your mug, but those are the innovations that I just mentioned, and it's really making this whole reuse movement happen. The other chart on the right, it's a little different. It's comparing same material. So we are talking and different approaches for the same material. So in one side you have single-use glass bottle, and on the other side you have reusable glass bottle. So when you think about emissions only, right, for glass is heavy, right? So we often think about, okay, it's cool, it's nice, but it's heavy and we're going to have more emissions. That's true, right? For a single use, you can account here the production of glass and also the secondary and tertiary packaging that you need to protect the glass from breaking, right, which is the orange one. And then you have the emissions related to transportation, which is the yellow part here, and the end of life. But then you only use once and you have all that emissions. And then when you reuse, you basically take out all of the bottle production there, right? And then your emissions lower a lot, right? So it's all about finding the break even, right? And when those things make sense. I think reuse is here to stay. That's each situation needs to be analyzed. I think the life cycle analysis is a great tool to analyze each one of the scenarios and what is the packaging that makes sense to that situation and to that region, right? So it needs to be analyzed to find the best tools you have, but I'm a big fan. Jumping into recycling, which is my area, starting with some facts about recycling. This chart here on the right shows that 60%, right? So that's the deep green here, the dark green, and the other green right beside. So that makes up 60% of households in the US have access to curbside recycling. For a country that's one of the biggest consumption markets in the world, that's not enough, right? And if we don't collect for recycling, how we can recycle, right? There's no magic there. So it's a system that is it has a lot to improve, and it is improving, right? We had the China sword policy the end of 2018 that pushed, right, for a lot of things to happen, and it was actually a good thing in my opinion. So they are happening. It's just much more complex, right? Because it goes from your home, the curbside, the collection, which is one player, and then the next one that's probably bail, and then the next one that's going to recycle, and then there is a recycling market that competes with the virgin price. So it's super complicated, right? But less than 20% of all plastic packaging is currently recycled as a result of that. And that number of 20% is from the APR, which is the Association for Plastic Recyclers in the US. Some people say that number is 5, others say its number is 2. I use the 20 here because even if it's 20, it's not enough, right? My point is that it's too low. But it is increasing, and there is a recent report that just said that to meet the 2030 targets that some big brand owners are making in increase the recycled content in their products, over 100 new PET recycling facilities and 68 new polyethylene or high density polyethylene recycling facilities will need to open to be able to supply and those brand owners to meet their targets. So that's a lot that needs to be happen. A lot that needs to happen for recycling work. I think it's an important piece of the puzzle. Because not everything can be reused, of course, not everything can be reduced. So we need to increase recycling as much as possible too, but it's just more complex. And that's why I have one more slide in recycling. This public is well educated, so you probably know there's more than one technology. There is mechanical recycling, there is chemical recycling. Mechanical recycling is a technology where we don't break down the plastic, let's say like that. You just melt the same plastic and make something new out of it. And the chemical recycling is the one that you break down the plastic and then you rebuild, you make new plastic, right? So you cut in little pieces at the molecular level and then you repolymerize, or you make the new chemical reaction to make a new plastic. So I hope that's clear. And I like to mention that they are both, I see a place for both. I think they are complementary technologies, and that's my point of view. Mechanical recycling should always be prioritized, and for the reasons that I'm going to say now, it's a more mature process. It's a lower environmental footprint. Water consumption could be high for mechanical because you really need to make sure that you wash well the material, so you lower the contamination and you have a good quality coming out. And you can achieve food grade with mechanical if you work well through the contaminants, so you can do the closed loop, like a bottle going back to be a bottle in the mechanical recycling. Under certain conditions you can do that. On the cons of mechanical recycling is the contamination, right? It's really sensitive to any contamination, and also with the composition of the plastic, like if it's a colored plastic, it's already harder to recycle in mechanical, right? Some recyclers, they sort by color for that reason. Otherwise it will be always black, because when you mix all the colors in one big batch, right, it's hard to. So that's one constraint of mechanical for sure, and for that reason you cannot always meet food grade, right? The number of cycles that plastic can go over recycling, it's unclear. If you can, like, a recycled can go 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It's not, there's no consensus in the area. And it's, as I said before, is a very fragmented value chain, right? So you have the hauler, you have the company that do the sorting, you have the baler, you have the recycler, you have, so that's a lot of things that needs to align in the value chain. And mechanical and then chemical recycling, I would say the pros for chemical is that everything that's hard to recycle, that was badly designed, right? That's not like ready for circular economy, that the design is not good, it's hard to recycle. They take most of it, right? Because they just break down the polymer and make a virgin-like plastic back again that can be used in food contact and medical applications. Those are more sensitive, right? High regulated applications that the chemical recycling can attend. And then the number of cycles over and over is unlimited, right? Because every time it gets out, it gets virgin-like, and then you can just loop back again. The cons, they're important here, very important, right? The technology is less mature. That one, I think, is not as bad, right? Because it is evolving, right? So that they have room to improve. The most important con, I would say, is the energy intensive, right? Because you need that energy to break the plastic at molecular level, and that requires a lot of energy. So if you're doing that at a cost of energy cost that's higher than making from fossil fuels, it's not worth it, right? So it's really important to keep that in mind and make sure that that analysis is done, right? So, and also the possibility of making other products like fuel and waxes, that's another big debate around chemical recycling, right? The ratio of plastic and fuel is not well documented. A lot of companies are going after making 100% plastic feedstock from that process, which is a great goal, but we know not all of them are there yet. So I like when you look at those, I like the approach from Pew Research that they say that to meet the goals, we need to double mechanical recycling to a capacity that goes to 86 million metric tons by 2040, right? So 86 million metric tons. It's a good number, right? And develop plastic to plastic, not fuel, not waxes, but plastic to plastic conversion to 13 million metric tons. So I really like that because it's really like chemical recycling closing the gap where mechanical was not able to do it, right? So we're going to go to the more pollutant or the higher environmental footprint technology really when we need it. So chemical recycling should not compete with mechanical. Mechanical should be prioritized always. But I do see a room for chemical at lower capacity, right? As it's in the bottom here, in some cases. So yeah. I'm sorry if it's that too complicated. We can go over in the Q&A later. It is complicated for sure. So we are 2 slides. Let me see where I am in the time. The regulatory drivers that we have, so those are hopeful news, like some good news in the regulatory space. So we are seeing more and more bans in problematic plastics, like straws, plastic bags, right? And that's happening state by state and globally. Extended producer responsibility, or the EPR, I'm sure most of you are familiar. 4 states in the US had approved, 2 last year and 2 states this year, Colorado being one of them, yes. And probably, I'm hoping to see at least one more approving this year, I don't know, but if not this year, first half of next year for sure, we're going to see more EPR. And what is EPR, by the way? It's the making the producer responsible for managing the end of life of a packaging, right? So that's really driving design, because if they cannot meet the state goals, they need to pay a fee, and if they don't want to pay that fee, they got to design better so the material can be reduced or recycled, right? So of course, I'm being super simplistic here. Each EPR is different, and they are not the same at all in any of those 4 states that we have right now. But they are overall very good news for the space. Bottle and containers deposit bill modernization, we are seeing that a lot too. So it's a lot of momentum. Recycled content requirements, that's important, in the recycling space. If you have recycled content requirements, that's a big driver to increase recycling capacity, right? And the plastic treaty that was approved this, I think was past March in the Nigeria, the UN headquarters there. And what that means that I like to say that will be the Paris Agreement for plastics. And that's really a legally binding agreement that will go from production to end of life, right? It has the ambition to cover the whole value chain. And make producers and everyone in the value chain responsible for the plastic that they are selling, right, or using. So the negotiations already started, and is expected to be effective in 2026. And then the voluntary reporting, right? Ellen MacArthur Foundation is leading the way with over 500 organizations that represent 20% of the packaging producers. So remember the first chart in application, so packaging making up 40%, right, of the applications. So 20% of the producers, they committed with Ellen MacArthur Foundation to very bold targets around reduction, reuse, and recycling. That's voluntary, completely voluntary, but it got a big traction. And the CDP recently published that they're going to have their plastic score starting 2023, which it will be a big driver as well. So those are some good news, and I'm wrapping up with what can you do? Right? If you're looking at me with this face saying, okay, this is not necessarily good news, but so you can do a lot, right? It depends on where you're sitting. Of course, in your household, you can always do, but if you own a business, if you work for a small company or medium or large company, you can always do something, right? Vote with your money, I would say, is number one as an individual. That means, think twice before buying something, right? And reduce the use of plastic packaging material, implement as many reusables as possible, stay local, right, as far as ingredients that you buy or, goods in general, refuse what you don't need, right? So I got my kids using straws at restaurants now. They say, well, we are kids, but we can drink out of a cup. I don't know why they think kids cannot drink without a straw, but they refuse. They learn to refuse. Sort your waste at home, right? Don't delegate everything to the city, because the system is really needing your help, right? So if you can sort at home and bring to a recycling center. I know in Colorado there is EcoCycle. They're great. They accept, and we can share, Becky, maybe, after the webinar, some resources. We can share the EcoCycle. Here in Atlanta, I have Charm. We can share that one too. So those are NGOs. They're independent, and they are recycling centers. You need to sort at home and bring to them, and they work with individual vendors that are going to recycle that waste, and you divert from the landfill. Spread the word, help educate others. If you learn something here today, share with your neighbor, share with your husband or wife. If you more at the business level, it's the second half here. Implement take back. Even if you're a small business, you can always take back. And Elizabeth and I, we are working something right now that we are advising small companies, and they can always take back their containers and wash it and reuse again, and give some type of incentive to their customers, like 5% discount in the new item, for example, right? So you can implement reusables at any level. Redesign your products. If you think they are not good, you redesign. Work with upstream in your value chain. If you're a supplier, tell them, hey, I need a better one. I don't know what to do with this one. The end of life is terrible, right? Have that conversation upstream. Calculate your plastic footprint. If you don't know the plastic footprint, you don't know where you are, you don't know how much you can reduce, and then you can set targets for reduction and for reuse and for recycling. And if you're in a business, you can educate your customers, right? I'm sure they will appreciate. So that's it that I have for now, and I'm eager to learn from you now and have a nice chat. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm dropping the plastic footprint calculator in. I'm gonna go ahead and 1 second. I think we got a question in there. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I feel like that was so much wonderful information. And honestly, I feel like you gave me hope. Like there are ways that we can create systems to create change. So I think there was a lot of hope that I heard in there as well, which makes it really exciting. We do have a question. Let me see real fast. Megan asked, not sure if this is exactly on topic, but any suggestions on e-waste recyclers with a national offering? I feel like I hear they are not all properly recycling the items and would love to provide a national resource for our company.
Yeah, so e-waste, there are EPRs in some states for e-waste, so we can talk later, like depending on where they are. In what state they are, it might be a different situation, but I think the best path for e-waste is probably the store collection. I know here in the South, I don't know if it's the same you have up there, but we have the what is the name? There is Staples, and there is the other one. I had a blank on the name now. Best Buy. Thank you. Someone is there. Okay. Best Buy, Staples. I know they collect and they work with companies that come get their waste. And again, value chain, very fragmented, right? So the retail store, they collect, and then there is another actor that comes and dismantle. And then they dismantle, they separate the metal, which is usually more high value, from the plastic, and there is batteries. So they do all that. And then they work with each one of those materials. They work with separate recyclers, that one will take the metal, other will take the plastic, and one watch out for plastics in e-waste is the flame retardant, which is a chemical of concern to a lot of them. So the recyclers that I know the right way to do that. They need to separate the components with flame retardant so they don't recirculate in the system toxics, right? Toxics and chemicals of concern. So there's a couple of companies that do e-waste recycling here, but they need that value chain to be aligned in order for them to get the material. So feel free to reach out to me. I imagine you have a very specific region or reason why you're asking that. Let's talk more. I might be able to help you better.
Yeah, I love that. I also posted PCs for People is in Colorado. That's one that we've worked with in the past, and I know that they work really hard to ensure that all of the pieces are going somewhere before they try to, before they go to the landfill. They're not necessarily nationwide, but they do have some other locations across the US as well. So might be an option for you as well, Megan. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to go ahead and post those in the chat. Or if you would like to unmute and ask your question, you can do that too. Use that little reaction icon down at the bottom to raise your hand, and we will call on you to ask your question. This is a great time to go ahead while we have our expert here to ask for this really complicated system. I think you talked so much about, there's a lot of things have to align, right? The supply chains and the buyers and all the pieces have to connect together. So this is a really great time to go ahead and ask your questions, because it really is complicated, but we can simplify it.
Yeah. I have one quick comment on the plastic footprinting, I haven't, I see you shared one there. That's for individual, right? Okay. For companies, that's a new market, and that's something that I'm working on. So if you are a company and you want to calculate your plastic footprint and go from there to set targets for a company, reach out to me, because that's something that we just launched, and we are looking for even like pilots to roll out. So even if it's a small company, we can talk about it.
I love that. Will you eventually have it so that's a link for people to utilize as well?
Yes. Yeah. So that's more for companies, but that's, to really understand what you have in your whole value chain, not just the final packaging your product, but what is inside your process. It really depends on the company. And so you have, it's like a carbon footprint, right? So you have in that scope, what is your volume, and going from there, what are your targets for reduce that volume or to implement some type of reuse models or recycling, So that's something that we've been working hard, but that's more for companies than individuals.
I love that. But I think that that's really important, because I think there are so many calculators out there that just do that for the individuals. And there's companies who really want to try to do better, but don't necessarily have those same resources of establishing that baseline, because that baseline is how you know where to create that change and how to create that change and what steps you need to take. So I love that you're working on that for companies.
Yeah, it's exciting. Do you want to do the poll?
Oh, we could do the poll. Yeah. I was going to ask, what is your favorite tip that you give to people when you talk about how to reduce your plastic waste? Or just your waste in general?
I started my journey. So I started my journey reducing my waste at home. I would say 3 or 4 years ago. So I have a lot of those in my blog. And then like how to reduce waste in your kitchen, how to reduce waste in your bathroom. And I have some easy swaps there, right? It's really like I started making yogurt. The granola packaging is the worst. I started making my granola. I get that's not feasible for everyone, but I have a lot of different tips there. So I would say in my home today, we make almost everything. We get local ingredients and we make almost everything that we consume. I do go to the supermarket and do get frustrated with the few plastic packaging that I get, but I bring them to my recycling center, and that makes me feel better, right? So yeah, I don't know if that responds at all, but it's not one single solution, right? It's several things that you can do.
Yeah. Just taking little steps, right? Just starting that process and making those changes.
And see what makes sense for you and your family.
Yeah, exactly. And Michaela had mentioned something about plastic bricking. Take a plastic bottle and shove all the microplastics you produce in it until full. That way the microplastics don't get lost in the waste stream. Any thoughts on that?
Wow, I never heard about that, Michaela. My God, the microplastic. So you mean more like the textiles and where do you get your microplastic? That's the first question.
Yeah, I can talk about that a bit. It's like if you open a container and you accidentally rip off the corner of like a plastic bag, or those little plastic bits that hold bread bags together. So just really any like small plastic pieces that you produce, I like to put them in a bottle. And that way it doesn't just get lost, if it falls out of the trash truck or lost at the waste facility. And then there's also a company, I'm trying to find what it's called, but they actually accept the plastic bricks if they're packed tight enough to like a certain density. And then they use those plastic bricks to build affordable housing. So I'll do some research and try and find the company and send a link in the chat.
I also feel like there's a company like that in Colorado too. So I will also look at that and send it in the resources, the follow-up email. We'll send a follow-up email with the recording as well as additional resources. Ash asked, do you
Very
think that
cool.
companies like Carbios, which are scaling up enzymatic degradation through bioengineered enzymes, can help achieve us with these targets sooner, since plastic production is still projected to increase by 70% in the coming decades?
I'm familiar with those technologies. I like them. My biggest concern is scalability. They are cool technologies that are still at the lab scale or pilot scale. I don't know how much and how fast they can scale to really make an impact, right? We need that, but not by itself. As I said, there's no single solution. We need several of those innovations together, capturing waste and being part of the circular economy. Yeah,
that's great. I love it. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and launch another poll question that we have for you. And as you are answering that, I'm going to ask our famous women in sustainability question. What do you see, looking into your magical crystal ball, as the future for sustainability? You're on mute. And that can be really about anything. It can be about today's topic. It can be about what you see for your future. So what do you see as the future for sustainability?
Oh, is that question for me?
Yeah, that question's for you. Yeah. That's we always love to ask our presenters at the end. That's our standard women in sustainability.
Okay, I thought it was for everyone. Can you repeat, please?
For you. So yeah, what do you, like, looking in your crystal ball, what do you see as the future for sustainability? And it can relate to today's topic or just what you in general see as the future. What do you hope for in that crystal ball?
In my crystal ball, I'm really passionate about educating the next generation, because I do believe it's going to take a generation for us to make a real change and an impact. So it's not for nothing that I changed my career when I had kids. They changed my angle and made me quit the plastic industry to do something for the good. So I'm passionate about educating kids. So that's what I do in my free time. I give to them all my knowledge at the school programs that I lead here in Atlanta. So I think that's the future. I think they are the future, and we need to empower them now with the information that we know now, so they can make better choices than we did.
Yes. Yeah. Youth is so important. And I love that you're working with them and all the work that you're doing. Thank you. You're working so hard. And I'm so thankful that we had an opportunity to spend time with you today. Thank you for sharing this wonderful information. Here are those end results. So about 54% of people said that they're ready to implement new practices into their household, 31% increased shopping awareness, and then 15% as business will look further to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So you have taught so much to us today. We're so thankful. Everybody, please help me give a thank you to Leticia. Either show those reactions, clap your hands. Thank you so much. We're so appreciative. Thank you, everybody, for spending the day with us. We're so thankful to have you here. We have an amazing event tomorrow night with Patagonia, focusing on actually talking about Waste No More, which is on our ballot in Colorado and Denver. Join us. We'll be celebrating, having food, beer, seltzers, non-alcoholic beverages, and music, along with talking about our 2022 midterm ballots. Please, everybody, vote November 8th. It is so important to have our voices heard. And womeninsustainability.org for more information. And as a thank you to you today, on behalf of Women in Sustainability, we will be planting 3 trees in your name to be planted in national forests in the US. So thank you for spending your time with us, sharing your expertise. We'll send Leticia's information in the email. Please follow up with her. And everybody, enjoy the beautiful day. Thank you. Have fun. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.